All right. This is WOBC, Oberlin 91.5 FM, Oberlin College and Community Radio. And because I am picking up from dead air, I am obliged to say, beyond that, our mailing address is Wilder 319, 135 West Lorraine Street. Our phone number is 440-758107, and you can contact us at WOBC.org. We now begin our broadcast. And that just makes it all sound a little bit too official there. You're listening to Oberlin. My name is Peter Cummings. I live in town, but I don't work in town, and as such, the goal behind the show was to just talk to people who live and work in town, see what they do, what's going on in the community. Today I have the pleasure of having Steve Johnson, former Oberlin High School marching and concert band director, with me. Hi, Steve.
Hello there.
This, I believe, is my 8th show and the last one of the college semester. Tomorrow the station goes, I think you would say, off air for a little while, and then goes into summer programming. And my goal, my intent is to stick around and do some shows over the summer. I've enjoyed them. I haven't heard from anybody that you haven't enjoyed them, and as such, I won't feel like I'm forcing myself on anybody. I'm just going to keep doing these. I am working on a podcast Kickstarter proposal. I've had it looked at by one of my brothers who gave me some good critical advice on the video, which is the most worrisome part that I had, just because it's one thing to even hear my voice, but it's another thing altogether to look at me while I'm talking in that voice. I've been in print media for 20 years, and I do enjoy radio a lot. It's why I'm up here, but you would never see me ordinarily in front of a camera, still or otherwise. So, because I had a request for the request line, the call-in line, that number is 440-775-8139. If you have a question or a comment for Steve, you can give a call. You can get in touch with us here. I'm going to, while I'm talking, just log into my computer at home to make sure that things are recording properly. I also have a co-DJ with me today, my daughter Lizzie. Say hi, Lizzie.
Hello.
She's 8. She's cool. She's also giggly. All right, well, Steve, I wanted to have you on because among so many people in the community in my formative years, you were there for 6 or 8 of them, I think, going back to, well, even the end of 5th grade is when I was asked to pick an instrument to play. I actually, in Prospect, chose orchestra first, and I don't know if, that wouldn't have been a story I'd had a reason to tell you, but I thought, well, maybe I'll play the cello. I decided that, and then maybe 24 hours later thought, no, I don't want to play the cello, and ended up moving over to the French horn. But end of 5th grade, beginning of 6th grade, we're talking the early 80s there, would have been my first exposure to your style as a director and who you were in the school district. But you had been there before. Can you tell a little bit of the story about how you came to Oberlin and how you came to be the director at the Oberlin City Schools?
Sure. I guess that goes all the way back to my childhood, because I joined band when I was in 4th grade, 2nd semester, and I chose the trombone. And Doug Handyside was the director back then and got us off to a great start, and then he left, and Mr. Jim Billingsley took over for the next 9 years, and that saw me up through graduation. So during those formative years, I guess by the time I was in 7th or 8th grade, I decided that, being a director was a pretty cool thing. My best friend Bob Cooley and I went to a concert of the Cleveland Orchestra in Finney Chapel, and I remember they were doing Beethoven's 7th Symphony, and I just watched George Zell, and I just thought, wow, what a great profession you wave the stick and people do what you want them to do. That's pretty cool. So
it's a nice power to have.
Yeah, so I went to college. I graduated from Oberlin High School in '68, and then went to college. I started at Ohio State, but I finished at Eastern Kentucky University and went straight through and got my master's. And then my very first band job was actually as an assistant band director in Massillon High School. And I had a junior high band and later an elementary band and the sophomore band at the high school, and I also assisted with the marching band there. I spent
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I spent 2 years in the Army, and then the job opened up at Oberlin. And they had been through a bit of a rough patch. I was actually the 7th director in 9 years, I think.
Wow.
Mr. Billingsley left. Mr. Lee was there for a couple of years. Then there was another guy who was there 2, another guy 1, another guy 1, another guy 2, and then I showed up.
I've certainly heard through different family members that the 60s were a really big, strong period for bands at Oberlin High School. I've seen some pictures.
Yeah.
The marching band was huge. The concert band was huge. What made it such a thing to do during the 1960s and perhaps before?
Well,
but
you have to realize that it was a whole different time back then. In the fall, you had football, and you had cheerleading, and you had the band, and that was really it. There was no soccer, there was no volleyball, there was no Title IX, so there were no organized girls sports, at least competitively.
Sure.
There was the Girls Athletic Association, GAA, but that was intramural. So it got to be a thing to do, and when Mr. Billingsley came with his unique style of marching and sort of it's like a marching dance style, it really caught on. And so, we had, I think the most we ever had in band was 90. It's funny now, all these years later, people come up and say, "Didn't you have 200 in the band?" No, but it seems to grow every year.
Right.
That's a good thing.
The fish was that big, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So, that's how I got started.
You talk about it was Billingsley, his marching band style that he taught.
Right.
Can you describe it a little bit more? What made it something that he taught? What was his background?
Well, he was a great proponent of choreography. And in other words, the music has to fit the band. And the steps have to fit the music. So before then, before he showed up around here, the basic style was to go out and form a block letter and play a song, and then move to a picture of some sort and play a song, and then play your alma mater and come off the field. That was basically what everybody did in the late 50s and early 60s. In fact, a lot of the printed music at the time came with the picture that you were supposed to do and how to place your members on the field. It was that cut and dried. But his was a lot different. And it really sparked a lot of enthusiasm in the area.
And you were in that band, and you played the trombone.
Yeah. I got in when I was in 8th grade and remained there through graduation. The old practice field used to be where the high school gym is right now.
Okay.
That was an open field on the side of the building. And then when they added that gym, we moved out back. Sort of where the soccer field is now.
Right, yeah, I have many memories of 90-degree August days, and the stories later were pretty comparable. Who was hotter, the soccer players or the band members marching out there? Everybody was sweating.
I think everybody was miserable.
Could have been. But
in the 60s, when we were out there for summer practice, it became a thing to do in town to come out and watch the band practice. And there are pictures of the cars lining the 100 yards of the field. And people would just come out and bring a little snack, and everybody would have a good time, and the kids would run around, and And there we'd be out practicing and, like you said, sweating and getting real dusty and dirty.
Sure. Well, I, without that background, that information, had always assumed that maybe you brought that marching style to the band during your time at Oberlin High School, but it predated you, in fact.
Right. And, you tweak it to your own, but basically the core of it was what I grew up with.
Mm-hmm. And so it was Billingsley, and then who came after? Handyside?
No, Handyside was before. He was in the 50s and early 60s.
Oh, okay.
And then Mr. B was there from 61 through 69, I believe.
Okay. All right.
And then there was Tice, Backey, Williams, and I can't remember the last guy.
Sure. A number of them before you returned. And
right.
You came in what year?
I came in the fall of 77.
Okay. And the department, I don't want to put words in your mouth as it was in maybe disarray, but what were you walking into that? And with your experience at Oberlin High School, did you have a goal in mind? I am going to set these goals to meet by these times?
Yeah. It was a funny story because I was in the Army and had just gotten engaged, and then within a couple of weeks after that, I got orders to go to Korea, and then a story appeared in the news trim, which I got at post by mail, and it said that the job was going to be open here again. Mm-hmm. So I went to my commanding officer, and I said, I'd really like to go home and apply for this job, but I've got a little bit left on my enlistment. And he really liked my wife, Mary Ann.
Oh, okay.
He had met her, and he really liked her, and he knew that we had just gotten engaged.
Sure.
So he said, I'll tell you what, let's get you out of here. Uh-huh. And so within 7 days, I was home.
Amazing.
It was amazing. This was post-Vietnam, so, they had a surplus of soldiers anyways at that time. But I was always grateful to him, and I got home and applied for the job, and then found out that, again, I read the newspaper and found out they'd given the job to somebody else. Even though I had interviewed, I didn't get a phone call or anything saying, thanks a lot, but no thanks.
Right.
But then the day before school started, I got a call saying the guy they had hired had turned him down. And
just that day.
Just that day. So they wondered if I was still interested, and I said sure. So I came in the next day and found the band program just basically completely disassembled. Mm-hmm. I found that we were missing dozens and dozens of instruments. Music library had been decimated. I found odd parts everywhere, and I just started stacking them in the office. Pretty soon I had a stack 6 feet high.
Now, was that in the back of the high school, same as it was when...
Right.
Okay.
Right. But the storage room and the band office that was not there.
Okay.
It was just that little office up front there.
Okay.
So... you just start from scratch, and I remember going in the very first day of school and telling everybody we got a home football game this Friday night, and we're going to have a band there.
How many is everybody?
Well, everybody at that time was about 20 people in band.
Okay, all right.
That was about it.
In the marching band?
And marching band, there had been none for a year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, there had been no marching band for a year.
So you were telling the concert band, there's a football game coming. We're going to have a band.
We're going to have a marching band. We're going to meet after school.
And you're all drafted.
Yeah. I just said anybody who's interested.
Oh, okay.
Because, some of them are on the football team.
Well,
some
true.
of them are in, by that time we had Title IX. So, there's volleyball and there's soccer and there's all these other sports. So I said, I need people who are interested, because if you guys don't come out, then that means I'm going to have to take my trombone out there on Friday night and play it by myself, and I'm really not looking forward to that.
But I bet you would have.
So that afternoon, we had like 9 kids, and the next day we had like 12 or 13. And by Friday, we had a full complement of 16 kids.
All right.
4 across and 4 deep.
Okay.
And we were able to learn the pep song, which I had to write out from memory because all the parts were gone.
Sure.
So we marched straight out 32 steps, turned around, played the pep song, played the alma mater, and marched 32 steps off. And that was the first game. And the crowd went nuts.
Well, how many years could it have been, right?
Yeah. They just went crazy. Yeah, I mean, they were clapping and cheering and all this. And it gave the kids a real boost, and pretty soon, we had 20 and then 24, and so we ended up the season very well. But I often wondered what would have happened had the crowd laughed.
Oh, well.
Or if they had,
not received it.
Booed or catcalled or something.
Sure.
What would have happened? And I thought that was a real class thing for that crowd to do, and it's something I've been grateful for ever since.
Well, no doubt. It feels like it set the tone for a lot of years to come.
It did. It did. It gave legitimacy immediately to what we were trying to achieve in the band program. Mm-hmm. And I had come from programs with a high performance standard. Yeah, well, Massillon, but also, my years at Oberlin.
Oh, of course, right.
And so I knew what it was going to take to build a program where you had very high standards of performance, whether it be in the concert band or in the marching band or the pep band or solo and ensemble or anything, and how to build the discipline to achieve all that. And that's when my time in the Army really helped.
Well, let me say that of my time on the soccer field watching you guys in the marching band practice, one of the things that stands out in my mind is the strict stepping that was involved, and your posture was just straight up and down. and it felt from a distance, and with no military experience anyway, but it felt from a distance like, oh, you were really bringing some of that experience to bear on the marching band.
It was just that. And what was unique, I think, we were always the smallest band, because I didn't want to make it mandatory, because I knew, for the kids who had other interests, that was going to really cut down on the concert band if you said, okay, everybody has to do this.
Sure. So
it was always a strictly volunteer outfit. And I also didn't want to get kids too young, 7th grade, 6th grade. I felt that was going a bit far. But we did take, like in my day, 8th graders through seniors, and being small, you depend on one another a lot more. It's like a platoon in the military. Everybody's responsible for everybody. And so you build this camaraderie and this esprit de corps and this willingness to sacrifice maybe what I want to do for what the group needs to do. And that idea caught on pretty quick. I had some really neat kids in those early days who saw where I wanted to go and had the ability to inspire other kids to do the same. And so it was a wonderful 25 years, I can tell you.
This is WOBC Oberlin 91.5 FM, Oberlin College and Community Radio. You're listening to Oberlin. My name is Peter Cummings, and I'm up here with my co-DJ, Lizzie. Say hi, Lizzie. Hello. She's up here helping me out today. We're talking with Steve Johnson, retired Oberlin City Schools concert and marching band director, and other things, and we'll get to those as we get through the show. But as you're talking about those early years of the marching band, and it may be a few years after 77, but there's the active marching that you guys did, but one of the other sounds, well, yeah, it was a sound that for me always identified the marching band, was the drum that you marched to when you came in.
Right.
And for a lot of the memories that I'm thinking of, it was an Adrian, and I can't remember the... Okay, who was on the bass drum, I think.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, did he come up with that riff that he played on the way in? Was that given to him?
Well, how shall I say this?
However you
Drummers are good thieves.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
And the way cadences develop is you hear a riff somewhere, either from another band or something on television or whatever, and you take a kernel of that idea and you twist it, give it your own flavor, and you come up with something, and then you play that, and you become identified with that.
Well,
so we had several cadences that we used that sort of said, oh, if you hear that, it must be an Oberlin is coming.
Absolutely.
So that was cool to watch that process. Some of them I taught them, others that they made up, and that was always fun to me, was when students would come up with their own thing.
Sure.
There were lots of times on the field where I would have everything plotted out, and I would go through it, and all of a sudden there's a snafu somewhere. There's something that's not working.
Right.
And rather than trying to force my will on something that's not working, I'd just turn to the band and say, okay, this is where we are. This is where we have to be.
Right.
Now, who's got a creative way of doing that? And they'd look around, and 9 times out of 10, somebody would come up with an idea that was much better than the one I had.
Well, it sounds a lot like coaching. I'm imagining basketball teams where the coach has these set plays, and then someone goes rogue and decides, well, I'm going to just shoot a 3 from the half court, or I'm going to go in for a dunk. And here you are as a coach trying to do the same thing with the marching band, but there's a different kind of creativity, it sounds like, maybe was allowed in this case, and for good reason.
I wanted the students to be able to operate independently with guidance from the podium.
Sure.
And after all, there's imposed discipline, which is intimidation and fear, and it works. But it works until you turn your back.
Right.
But, really the only kind of discipline is self-discipline. And if you can foster that kind of feeling within any group, it's going to be successful, because then everybody is on the same page. They're all after the same goal. And when you get that kind of situation, it's going to work. It's going to be a very successful time. I remember one time I had to have surgery, and I was going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And it was right at the beginning of the marching season. We had done the first game or two, and then I was going to have to go under the knife. And the kids all said, what do I do? What are we going to do? And I said, well, we're either going to have to shut it down, or we're going to have to find another way of doing this. And they said, well, what's the other way? And I said, well, first of all, we have a substitute that's going to take care of things during the day. That's not the problem. It's marching band after school that we don't have somebody for. And you have to have an adult there. So they said, okay, give us a day. So they came back the next day and they said, okay, we got parent volunteers all lined up for the entire time you're gone. I said, okay, well, that's good. Now you're going to have to be able to rehearse yourselves, because you aren't going to have like a trained professional there to do things for you. You're going to have to rehearse the music. You're going to have to take the routines out there and work them the way you know how. You're going to have to do your calisthenics and your warm-ups so that you can be successful with this. And you aren't going to be able to do the same routines for 6 weeks, so somebody's going to have to take the initiative and write one of these things, or 2 or 3. And they said, yeah, okay, fine, have a nice surgery, see ya.
What years was this?
This was early 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
And doggone if they didn't do it.
Sure.
They operated on their own, and I found out from the parents later on that they were harder on each other than I ever was.
Right.
And they would go to festivals and whatnot, and they went to a festival out in Geneva, and it was announced that their directors recuperating from surgery, and they're here on their own. They got a standing O,
right?
Sure. So I heard about this and went out to the field a couple days later, and I had a scowl on my face, and they said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm really angry with you guys." And they said, "Angry? What did we do?" I said, "You guys come out here, you work every day, you're doing fine, you go to this festival, you get a standing O. People are going to find out just how useless I am, and I'm going to be out of a job."
Right.
So they all laughed, of course, but it was a great time because it was their discipline, their self-discipline that carried the day.
Well, the band and you and Mr. Handyside and Billingsley before you, there's a reputation in this area that people are aware of Oberlin and the marching band and the concert band. I work in Avon Lake, and I've had calls, and I'm terribly sorry that I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but a former director up there who, in a casual conversation a few years ago, I said, "Yeah, I grew up in Oberlin." "Oh, Oberlin." And there's the headline for the show, of course. And we talked for a little bit about, I was name dropping, so I used your name. And
he didn't walk away?
No. Well, it was over the phone, but he didn't hang up. But
that's good.
But not at all. The whole program has a reputation behind it that is really amazing. It's nice to be somewhere else and hear that kind of respect for your alma mater, your school.
Yeah.
And I was never in the marching band, but carrying it over to the concert band, when you started, you said there were 20 kids in the band, and everything was disarray, parts up to the ceiling in your office there. How was it different building the concert band program?
It was basically the same kind of thing. We started with very little instrumentation that was woefully incomplete. I remember my 6th grade band had only 12 kids in it, and 8 of them were trumpet players. Because there'd been no recruiting done the year before. I guess the guy said, "Yeah, whatever anybody wants to play, they can play."
Right.
So it took probably 4 or 5 years to get people thinking in terms of the entire group, and how do you how do you get the right instrumentation? How do you start choosing the right kinds of music? Mm-hmm. And so it was the same kind of process. And then to create an atmosphere in the classroom where everybody is tied into the same musical goals. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, then our rehearsals were extremely disciplined. I would have other directors or clinicians or other people come in, and they would just marvel that everybody would be sitting quietly and do exactly what was asked. Sometimes we'd have a clinician come in, and they'd be working on a piece we had been working on, and maybe I was doing a certain passage this way, mm-hmm. and the clinician said, "Do it that way." Mm-hmm. And everybody would do it. And he said, I had several of them say, "Wow, it's nice to come here because we can really create things quickly." And that led to a lot of good moments with the concert band. We would regularly go to the Ohio Music Education Association adjudicated events.
Right.
And I remember we had a 6-year stretch in there where we got ones at state contest. And when you go to contest, as you know, there's a district level, mm-hmm. and you play for 3 judges on the stage and a 4th one in a sight reading situation.
Right.
And if you get a good rating there, then you go on to state contest, mm-hmm. and where it's the same thing, 3 and 1. So you've got 8 judges mm-hmm. Each year. And in those 6 years, 6 times 8 is 48. And out of those 48 judges, we got 46 1s and 2 2s.
Right.
And I always wanted, and, I would always tell the groups, I said, it's not the guys that are giving you the ones you have to listen to.
Right.
It's the guys who gave you the twos, because they're saying there's places where you need to improve. So let's find those places and make sure we take care of business.
What's it like teaching concert band? And by that I mean that different from a classroom where you're teaching science or English or social studies, you are getting immediate feedback in a different way, because I think there is immediate feedback in the other classrooms too, and I'm not just saying that for my mother's benefit. But in a different way in the band room, you're repeating, you're just directing literally directing a different kind of talent at work. What is that experience like?
Well, I'll tell you, conducting a concert band was my favorite thing of all, because you have all these different colors, all the different instruments, all the different ways that those instruments can be played to create all kinds of sounds, and then you have a score in front of you, which gives you all the information you need, notes, rhythms, dynamics, tempos, those kinds of things. But then on top of all that, you interpret that and create something meaningful and musical from that context. I used to say that if you took all the notes, the rhythms, the dynamics, all the little information that's on the page, and if a circle 3 feet in diameter is all that can ever be known about that piece, all of that information would sit in a circle about the size of a dime.
In the center of it, right?
Yeah, well...
Or wherever.
Wherever.
Yeah, right.
But there's so much more to know about the piece. Things that aren't in the score, things that only come from the heart and the mind.
And that's then what you're teaching, the interpretation.
Right.
The basic stuff is, yes, this is a C, this is the fingering for it on the French horn or
and
whatever.
It starts with that.
Sure.
I mean, you can't do the latter without doing the former. You have to get to a point of proficiency with your instrument where you can then get rid of the base or accomplish the basic thing before you can go on to really create the music. If I play with a poor tone, I don't care how many good interpretive ideas I have.
Right.
If it sounds bad, it sounds bad.
Right.
So you have to address that first. And that's your gateway. That's sort of like the gate that gets you into the rest of that big circle. So it's necessary, and so you start mostly, most times you start instruments in the 5th grade, and you work at it little by little, and hopefully by the time you get to high school, you've achieved somewhat of a skill level that allows you to do more challenging things.
This is WOBC Oberlin 91.5 FM, Oberlin College and Community Radio. We're going to take some number of seconds for a public service announcement and be right back.
Help make our region an even better place to live, work, and play by supporting the nonprofit Western Reserve Land Conservancy. From the countryside to the city, the Land Conservancy provides Northern Ohio with natural places that nourish and support vibrant and prosperous communities. The organization works with landowners, communities, government agencies, park systems, and other nonprofit organizations to permanently protect natural areas, farmland, and coastlines. We are also helping to revitalize urban neighborhoods throughout Ohio through its Thriving Communities Institute.
The Land Conservancy is the largest land trust in the state and has preserved 475 properties and nearly 35,000 acres in northern Ohio. You can get involved with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy by making a financial contribution, by volunteering your time, or by spreading the word about the organization's work. All donations go to land conservation work right here in our region.
To find out more, visit our website at www.wrlandconservancy.org or check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. For more information on the Land Conservancy's Firelands chapter, which is based in Oberlin, contact Kate Palacki at 440-774-4226 or kpalacki@wrlandconservancy.org. This message has been brought to you by WOBC, Oberlin College and Community Freeform Radio.
This is Oberlin. My name is Peter Cummings. I'm here with my co-DJ Lizzie. Say hi, Lizzie.
Hello.
Again. Yeah, you're good at that. All right. We're here for another half an hour today. My guest is Steve Johnson, retired Oberlin City Schools concert and marching band director. I wanted to ask, you had mentioned having clinicians come in. Certainly through my 4 years at the high school, which is when I remember it, there was always a relationship between the band program and the college. I mean, what a town to live in to have the conservatory, the Oberlin College Conservatory here as a resource to use. And I want to say there was a Robert Knight. Is that the gentleman?
John Knight.
Okay, who I remember coming a few times. And we, of course, played at some of the college facilities. Was that a relationship that was in place during your student years at the high school, or was that something that you helped facilitate?
It was actually a lot stronger when I was in high school. We would have up to 10, 12 student teachers every semester. But by the time I got there, the program hadn't been much, and so, you don't want to send student teachers to a failing program. So it took a while to establish that. Dr. Knight came in my second year and came by the field and introduced himself, and we hit it off right away. And so we started a 25-year cooperative effort. He would very often come over to the middle school and work with kids there, or he would come to the high school and either clinic the band or critique the band. He was there for me when I had questions about scores or conducting techniques. You couldn't ask for a better friend than Dr. Knight. He was truly a wonderful guy, and if it wasn't for him, I don't think we would have been the success we were. I owe a lot of what I learned in especially those early years, to him. He got me interested in going to the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic in Chicago, and introduced me to a lot of his friends who were notable composers and conductors. And I got to pick their brains, and that developed into some great relationships. I met Václav Nelibel, who is an incredible composer, and he came to Oberlin College a couple of times to do stays and work.
I remember the name.
And then he would make a point to come over and work with our group while he was in town. And this went on 2 or 3 times before I met him at Midwest one time, and he said, "I'm mad at you." And I said, "Why? What did I do?" And he said, "You've never asked me to write a piece for you."
That's right.
And I said,
he did write one.
Václav, we can't afford you.
Right.
And he said, "Well, how much can you afford?" And I said, "I am not going to insult you by putting out a number there that, is going to be far below your going rate." Well, he said, "Let's not worry about that, and I'll write you a piece."
I want to say that was during my time there.
And so he wrote a piece called Prayer and Thanksgiving.
That's right.
And and we premiered it at the spring concert. And Václav was there, but he didn't want to conduct that one. He did a couple of others. But he said, "You're the one that's brought it to life. You conduct it." And I argued with him, but he was adamant. So, but it was later published by a Great Works Publishing out in Grafton. And was a very successful piece. So, yeah, we did a number of those. Dr. Quincy Hilliard, who's at Southeastern Louisiana State University in Lafayette. Became a close friend of mine through my trips to Chicago, and he wrote a couple of pieces through the years for us. Ann McGinty, who grew up in Findlay, and her husband, her former husband, John Edmondson, became good friends, and Ann wrote a piece for us.
Is that something that happens for just any band?
You have, as one composer explained it to me, he says, here's how you commission a piece. You ask the composer, will you write a piece for me? They say yes, and from that moment, all you're doing is haggling about price.
Okay, all right.
But, I met some wonderful people doing that. I wish I had brought my notes, because we had two others that we did that were really good. And so we had these 5 composers that wrote pieces for us, and so that's sort of neat to get a piece published.
Sure.
And at the top it says, commissioned by and dedicated to the Oberlin High School Concert Band.
Right.
I thought that's pretty impressive thing.
Well, podcast or not, I'm sure that we're going to leave a lot behind today. That it'd be great to have you another time to come on and talk some more. Now, 25 years you were with the district?
Yes.
Okay, starting in 77, so 2002 would have been your last year?
Yeah, 2001 and 2.
And was that an easy decision? How did that decision come around?
It came at sort of a fortuitous moment. My youngest daughter, was graduating from high school. They had a buyout for us old folk.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
And so I decided that was a good time to go. And between the years I had spent in Massillon and my Army time that they gave me credit for, I was going to have enough years to get a decent pension. So that's why I made that decision at the time. 25
years of putting the program back together and then making it your own, and then making it the thing that it was to be known by other people in other communities. What was your hope in leaving the program set up a certain way for it to carry on in whatever direction?
Well, that's a good phrase, whatever direction. When I left, I wanted to make sure that the program was left in better shape than I found it, and that the transition to a new director would be smooth and as effortless as possible. So that last year, I spent the entire year creating a book of information for the new director. If you are looking for trophies, here's the company you go for. Here's where the nearest music store is. Here's this is the list of alumni. This is the list of all the kids that were in band last year. I really worked hard on that. And so then my thought was that when I walk out the door the last time, it's no longer my group. It belongs to somebody else. And they need to go their own way and create their own thing. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's not mine. Well, I made it a conscious effort to stay away. And I would tell the directors, I said, if you want me to be there, I'll be there. But if I don't hear from you, you won't see me in the stands and you won't see me in the audience, because there's nothing worse than the old band director hanging around kibitzing the new guy. Well, and it was a situation that you didn't walk into, because there wasn't that guy who immediately, there were a handful of guys who immediately preceded you. Although I wonder if Mr. Handyside and Billingsley, if they were sort of present, at least as a feeling in the school when you were there. I think walking a lot of that had been forgotten over time. But I made it a point to bring both of those gentlemen back for guest conducting appearances. And one of the great joys I had was seeing Doug Handyside on the podium again. And he did a fantastic job. And then Mr. Billingsley came a couple times. And it was just wonderful. And then Mr. Lee, who was a good friend of mine, came in and did it. And he was teaching up in Michigan at a college in Flint. And he also had like a honors band that he did in that area. And he brought them down a couple of times to play with our students. And so that was great. It was always fun sort of reliving old times.
Sure. The question I want to ask before we get on past 2002, the physical act of directing itself, how is that taught? How is that learned? I don't have a vast experience in watching directors. Of course, I watched you for 6 or 7 years, and fair or not, I judge a lot of other people based on my experience with you, and not everybody scores so well, by the way. But how is that style developed? How do you learn that? How do you then develop it into your own way of making this group of 40, 60, however many people follow you, the one person?
Well, it goes back to that old joke about how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, man, practice.
Oh, okay, right.
And that's what you have to do if you want to have any proficiency at anything. You're going to have to do it a lot. Mm-hmm. And I started conducting when I was in college. Every opportunity I got, whether it was a duet or whether it was a band. If I could find the opportunity to conduct, I did. You talk to good conductors. You go to clinics. You have a conducting class in college, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. And then, Dr. Knight helped me out a great deal. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, the score dictates a lot what you're going to do. If you're waving your arms wildly at a time where it says pianissimo, something's wrong with your style.
Sure.
And
or the band.
Yeah.
You're trying to get their attention.
In the mid-'90s, I tore my rotator cuff in my right arm.
While directing?
That was part of it. But they had to piece that thing back together because it was in really bad shape. When they got in there, they found all kinds of other problems. So, bottom line was when I got out of rehab, then for a while I could not move my arms really big. Uh-huh. So I had to bring everything in and put it in a box right in front of me, and then save the big movements for those very special times in the music.
Sure.
And I think that one thing probably made me a better director than anything else.
Huh. Right.
Because no longer, was I sort of uncouth and way out. It made look good, but looking back on it, I don't know that it was accomplishing what I needed to accomplish. But by using, your right and your left hand correctly and with some amount of feeling, then you can draw that out of your musicians. And
well, whoever teaches those movements, those little gestures with the elbow or the little flick of the wrist or whatever, it does deliver to the people who are watching that is in the band. Okay. It conveys the message of how to respond.
I remember just a few years ago, I went to Severance Hall and saw Franz Welsermoos, their head conductor, do Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So they're in the middle of the fourth movement, and the chorus is just wide open. And I'm thinking, this is a physical sensation. The sound's just pounding in your chest, and you're struggling to breathe, and you're thinking, it doesn't get any better than this. And he raised his arms and just lifted his fingers. And all of a sudden, the sound from the chorus doubled. Just for that one little movement, I thought, now there's brilliance right there. And you're right. You don't necessarily have to have big movements to get big results. It's that judicious use of a look and a sign to the musician that now it's time.
All right. This is WOBC Oberlin 91.5 FM, Oberlin College and Community Radio. You're listening to O Oberlin, the show that I, Peter Cummings, do because I live in Oberlin, but I don't work here. So I don't always get the chance to talk to people or hear about things that are going on or just visit with a good friend who was my band director. We'll just leave it as an undefined number of years ago. My co-DJ today is Lizzie, my daughter. Say hi, Lizzie. And yes, Steve Johnson is my guest, retired band director from Oberlin City Schools. 2002, you leave the district. Did you have a plan for what you were going to do after retirement?
No. I had some things that I wanted to do, but they sort of got sidetracked. After the first year, I got a call in late July to be told that the current director had resigned
At Oberlin. Oh, wow.
And somebody to get the marching program started in 3 days because they obviously wouldn't be able to hire anybody that quickly.
Sure.
So I went in and did that and took them up to the first game, and by which time they had another director. And then I got a call again in April saying that director was having a difficult pregnancy and was going to have to be on bed rest the rest of the year. So I finished out the year.
Not as easy to retire as you might have thought.
Yeah, right. But and then I had a long-term thing down in Wellington when their director had surgery. But those were sort of isolated incidents, but, my wife and I like to travel a little bit, and I have not time now for all the things I never had time for before.
And what are those things?
Well, I'm a member of a group called the Society for American Baseball Research, SABR for short.
Sure.
And so I've been very active in that group, and through the years, I've been president of our local chapter here in the Cleveland area. I had one term of that, and then I've done some writing and have given presentations on baseball. I did one out at Kendall for Oberlin Heritage Center and did one for a couple of them for Rotary. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing some writing. Recently, our chapter put out a book on the 1954 Indians. And I was one of the associate editors of that, and I also wrote one of the chapters about one of the players from that team.
And who was that?
A guy named Rudy Regalado.
And what is special about Rudy Regalado?
Rudy was only completed one complete year in the major leagues, and it just happened to be on a pennant-winning team.
If you have to go.
If you have to do it, that's the way to do it.
Right.
And I came across his name at the Baseball Hall of Fame. I used to visit there quite often, and then when I retired, one of the researchers there said, well, why don't you come up and work with us, volunteer up here. And so for 12 years now, I've been going up there once a year for a week, and I volunteer in the library. And in the library, they have clipping files of every player, coach, manager, owner, umpire, sportscaster, sports writer, special files on all-star games and World Series and no-hitters, and there's about 24,000 files, somewhere like that. And so I work in those files, and I ran across Rudy's file, and he was one of the few guys with really short careers, but he made out all right. He went to work for a television station in the marketing department, and then this was in Southern California. Then back in the early 60s, he got into real estate.
Oh.
And, of course, that was nothing back then, but
Sure.
then by the time he was ready to retire, some of that was rather lucrative. So, he made out all right, and that was sort of an unusual story for a ball player, and that's what drew me to him.
1 year in the game and a pennant ring and all the rest.
Yeah, and found out, he's living out in California, so I called him up and interviewed him over the phone.
And was it received well, the request for the interview?
Yeah, he was very impressed that anybody even knew him. But I said, "You're a hero to me."
Right. Sure.
And then. So, baseball is, I enjoy going to the games, whether it's minor league or major league. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy going around the country, and if there's a ballpark nearby, I'll usually try and get to it. Mm-hmm. And my other interest has been World War II research.
Okay.
My uncle, Cal Davidson, who lives outside of town here, he was a radio operator gunner on a B-24 and flew 31 missions over Europe, including D-Day, which was sort of interesting.
Yes.
But that sort of sparked my interest, and so I've been going down to the World War II Museum in New Orleans for conferences down there, and that's been another thing that it consumes a lot of time, but it's something I really enjoy.
And does it feel like retirement, or does it feel like you just have new fun jobs?
Well, I like to tell everybody that retirement means every day is Saturday.
Yes.
And as a retired teacher, every day in the winter is a snow day. So I've enjoyed it. It does feel like retirement because I'm actually doing the things I want to do.
Uh-huh.
Every once in a while, I miss the concert band. But I don't miss standing out on the field in the middle of a hailstorm or something.
Oh, no.
I remember it was August of 2002. It was late August, and there was this huge thunderstorm going on outside. And I was downstairs. I was watching TV, and my youngest daughter came down the stairs and said, "Well, Dad, are you happy?" And I said,
"About what?"
Well, that's sort of an odd question. Is that, is a Zen kind of thing or
right,
what?
Right.
What do you mean by that? She said, "No, Dad, this is Friday night. It's the first football game. You'd be out in this storm."
Right.
And I said, yeah. Well, I raised my glass and said, "Here's to all the poor suckers." I mean, those dedicated band directors who are out there tonight with their groups.
That helps to have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Speaking
of which, it just came back to me, the impersonations, and I don't think there were many, but there was one, the Saturday Night Live comic, the Wild and Crazy.
Oh, Steve Martin.
Yeah, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
You would occasionally throw an impersonation into band practice.
Yeah, that was fun. I had my really bad French accent, and I had my really bad Italian accent. I'm out of practice now, or I'd do one for you, but It's been a long time.
All right, I won't put you on the spot.
But yeah, that was funny. I used to do back in the days when Steve Martin first started, he would do this thing called Happy Feet.
Yeah.
And so when I was out on the band field and the band would do the routine right, I'd do Happy Feet. Mm-hmm. So then it got to be a thing. Every time they did something right, I had to do Happy Feet. So I had to find something else pretty quick.
So you were talking a minute ago about having the opportunities to go out to baseball games. Are you following Cleveland this year? Have you been out there?
Yeah, I haven't been to a game there, but I've been following them on TV and on the radio.
Uh-huh.
They got off to a bit of a rough start.
Yeah, that 7-game losing road trip.
They've had a pretty decent week so far.
Right.
So maybe they'll turn around.
And do you have? Does your baseball interest extend to things like the Independent League, the Crushers? And,
yeah.
Okay.
I fell in love with minor league baseball many years ago because, especially at the lower levels, like the independent leagues or single A, you go to the stadium and all the regulars are there.
Right.
And they know all the players because that's my guy. You know, and chances are that guy is staying in their house.
It could very well be.
And you see players who they're playing all out because they want to be noticed and they want to move up the ladder.
Sure. So
you see a lot of mistakes being made, but it's not for lack of effort. They're playing the game with wild abandon,
right?
That's fun to watch. I remember my sister who passed away, lived in Alaska. And every time I'd go up to visit her, they have what they call the Alaska League, which is a semi-pro league up there.
Plays for, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's more like 8 or 12 in the summertime. But you'd go there, and the place is loaded with Major League Scouts, because these are all the best college players from the West Coast, and they go up there and they play, and it's just fun to watch guys who are just there for the love of the game.
Do you have a bucket list of places that you're trying to get to see?
Oh yeah, my bucket list includes all the major league stadiums.
And how many left?
I've got about 16 left. And they keep changing on me, you know. They keep building new ones. So,
and any of them you need to get to before they aren't in operation anymore?
I don't think anything's on the bubble right now.
Okay.
Unless it's Oakland, they keep talking about it, but they haven't done anything about it yet.
Right. Okay. And let's see. You know, we've got the next DJ walking in, and I just, while I've got you, I don't want to miss out on that chance to ask you that last perfect question. But I guess maybe I'll just say, have you been back to the stands to watch the marching band?
Once long ago, I was invited to an alumni event that included, but that was the only time.
And do you keep in touch with some of the marching band people?
Mr. Nizak, who's the current director up there, and I are good friends. He was the Lorraine Catholic. And then when they closed that, that's when he came to Oberlin. And he and I have been friends going way, way back to those old days. And so, you know, he's got the program now and does a good job with it.
And as far as students, though, any of those that you keep in touch with?
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
So I can keep track with my old students.
Well, and you have at least one, Moorhead, right, who's a director? No, not Troy. Isn't he?
Troy is down in Florida, and he works for Disney World, but he and his wife also own a company that supplies things for the concession stands in major parks around the country. So yeah, he's doing real well, and that's half the fun of being on Facebook is you touch base with students. I have a private student now who's the son of one of my former students. So
it's gotten to that level.
It's gotten that level. You know, I don't understand why all you kids grow up and I just stay the youthful person I think I am.
Yeah, well, you stay that youthful person because I'm still 18 somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. I look in the mirror each morning and I see this bright young 16-year-old kid. And then I start to move and realize that maybe I'm a few years past that.
Well, not many, because among other things, your Facebook posts do say that you're a very busy person who's still going out and doing a lot of things. And it sounds great having had that full 25-year career at the Oberlin City Schools, being the director, and then all the fun stuff since. Yeah.
Well, it was a wonderful time at Oberlin, and I really enjoyed it. My colleagues there were wonderful, and you know, I just wish in the country that more politicians would see the value of arts programs. So many music and art programs have been cut from schools, and they are so beneficial to students in so many ways that have nothing to do with the art itself,
right?
But expand their minds and allow them to think in different ways. And you know, it's a shame that's what's happened in the country as far as that. But, you know, sometimes you just have to do it at a local level and hope it catches on. You know?
And if it doesn't, just be great at it at the local level.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Steve, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Lizzie, you want to say bye to everybody? Oh, now you're not going to say bye. Okay. Well, this is Oberlin. My name is Peter Cummings, and you're listening to 91.5 WOBC, Oberlin College and Community Radio. This is my last show for the semester, and I'll be looking for whatever interim schedule comes up to see when I can get back on. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/ooberlin. You can find me on Facebook. I have a closed group up there for the radio show. And, if you're in town, maybe you'll even see me here. Just stop and say, hey. Thanks, everybody, and we'll transition to the next show with a PSA.